World leaders, including Donald Trump, Theresa May and Scott Morrison, will shortly meet in Portsmouth to mark the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings. It's also the third and final day of the US President's state visit to the UK. Day 2 saw massive protests and a combative news conference. And SBS Europe correspondent Ben Lewis joins me now live from Portsmouth on England's south coast. Ben, how has the President's trip been received so far?
Well, Ricardo, good evening. It has been controversial, but British officials are likely relieved today that it hasn't been more controversial. In the last few minutes, the President himself has tweeted to say that the state visit has been a great success. Today is about remembrance, but yesterday was all about politics. Trump is promising the UK a phenomenal trade deal once it leaves the European Union, and he only had nice words to say about Theresa May. The President and the Prime Minister have always had an awkward relationship, but it seems Trump doesn't want her to go just yet.
I don't know exactly what your timing is, but stick around, let's do this deal. Okay?
Despite his request, Theresa May is still stepping down as Tory leader on Friday, meaning the President's visit to Downing Street was with a lame duck Prime Minister. Their styles couldn't be any more different. He says exactly what he's thinking, and Theresa May is measured and reserved. But given that she's already on her way out of office, could today be the day that she speaks her mind? In her own cautious way, the soon-to-be ex-PM did just that.
Like prime ministers and presidents before us, and no doubt those that will come after, we can differ sometimes on how to confront the challenges we face. I've always talked openly with you, Donald, when we have taken a different approach, and you've done the same with me.
Still, Trump was full of praise for Mrs May.
I have greatly enjoyed working with you. You are a tremendous professional and a person that loves your country dearly. Thank you very much.
He's far less impressed with London's mayor.
He's done a poor job. Crime is up, a lot of problems.
Sadiq Khan isn't taking the bait.
Well, this is not about having a feud or some sort of childish playground fight. This is about Londoners articulating the values that we have and calling out our best friend as a leader.
The President doesn't think much of Labor leader Jeremy Corbyn either.
Never spoke to him. He wanted to meet today or tomorrow, and I decided that I would not do that.
As for who he thinks should take over number 10...
So I know Boris. I like him. I've liked him for a long time. I think he'd do a very good job.
He'd later meet with Nigel Farage in private. While the Brexit Party leader is a Trump fan, not everyone is.
I heard that there were protests. I said, where are the protests? I don't see any protests. I did see a small protest today when I came, very small. So a lot of it is fake news, I hate to say.
It wasn't fake news. Thousands of protesters took to the streets.
If we didn't have Brexit, there'd be no state visit. We're just kowtowing for a trade deal.
There aren't enough words ending in "ist" to describe him. He's misogynistic, he's racist, he's isolationist, he's nationalistic, he leads a populist movement.
And soaring not that high above it all, the baby Trump blimp.
You know, he gave interviews saying, I used to love coming to London, but if they're going to put out blimps to make me feel unwelcome, I guess no reason to come to London. Poor baby.
This lone Trump supporter outnumbered and unwelcome. The British opposition leader addressed the masses.
By our demonstration here today, we've shown just how determined we, all of us, are to achieve that better place and that better world.
But he wouldn't discuss why he boycotted the state banquet.
You went to other state dinners with the Chinese leader. Why did you boycott this one?
It was a whirlwind day. At one point, the President declared the UK's revered National Health Service could be part of a US-UK free trade deal, but hours later, he backtracked, insisting it's not on the table. The special relationship may be slightly strained at the moment, but now it's time for present-day disputes to be put aside to remember how the alliance was forged. So the service here in Portsmouth will begin in a couple of hours. Theresa May will be joined by the leaders of 15 other nations, including Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison. They'll all be signing a document, the D-Day Proclamation, which pledges to do everything possible to avoid the unimaginable horrors of the Second World War ever happening again. Ricardo, this afternoon President Trump will be meeting with some veterans here, then he's off to Ireland for a night at his golf course there. and then tomorrow heading across the Channel to France for the French D-Day services.
Okay, Ben Lewis there in Portsmouth, thank you.